Max,
Yeah.
there's a name for it. Timeless.
We have a Cayman R, the most rare of 987s. This is the car that inspired the entire GT4 lineup. It all started here. Some of you may say that the Cayman R is basically just the Cayman S with a bit more like spice on top, but I would say there's more to this car than meets the eye. And what I mean by that is, okay, fine, it's got an extra 10 brake horsepower, the suspension's a bit stiffer, it's got a few little treatments, but this car, I think it gets you in the head. It's not so much about the spec sheet. This car makes you feel special. It's got the R moniker, and some could actually argue the R is more of a special badge than the GT4. The difference is on the outside in terms of styling. The front splitter is actually extended on the lower lip at the bottom. We've got the fixed spoiler on the rear. We've got aluminium doors for weight saving, and we've got these awesome wheels for even more weight saving. I believe they were the lightest wheels at the time. The limited slip diff is standard on this car. It's so much more than the spec sheet differences. If you're looking at this on a spreadsheet and you're saying it's about £15,000 more than mine, which is a 987 Gen 2 Cayman S, it's not all about the extra 10 brake horsepower or, you know, some of the styling touches. I can see the silver binnacles coming through the dash. I can see the silver seat belts. I can see the wing mirrors in silver with the stickers, through to the air intakes and the side vents in silver, to the spoiler in silver, and also the silver ring around the wheels. We have got extended leather here, and I really do think that gives it the touch of class. The black just works so well inside here. And do check the door pulls. Normally they're always red, as you can see they're silver here. Okay, so these are my first impressions. I never would have thought I would ever get the chance to drive a Cayman R. I've only done a couple of shifts so far in the car, but it's a great feeling. I know some people, like you, may say the car's quite stiff for you, but I just think that the suspension on this is lovely. This is what gives you the communication and the feeling on the car. The shift is definitely a shorter shift, I can feel that. Third to fourth, the travel was a lot less. Let's start with how I got into this Cayman R. The owner's next to me, and I won't refer to you by name, but thank you so much for meeting up with me and allowing me to get behind your car. How did you get into this Cayman R? Like, if we can maybe roll it back a little bit, is this your first Porsche? Just how did you get into that feeling that I want to purchase a Cayman R?
Well, I've always had classic cars. So I went from a Ford Mustang Fastback to a 944 Turbo and then into this. And the reason I went into this is predominantly because I needed something more reliable. My 944 was just getting to that point where it needed just too much money invested in it, and it was a case of, shall I invest in a new car or shall I do that one up? And the opportunity came up. As you've pointed out, these are highly sought after, very rare. I was lucky enough to find this one in Jersey. I've been looking for quite some time, but I'm very particular about specification. So you're right, you picked out all of the kind of reasons to believe and all the kind of USPs about this car, and the stars aligned. It had the exact spec I wanted. A lot of people kind of put more priority on things other, the track fiends. They want things slightly, spec differently than my main priority was actually the leather dashboard, bizarrely.
You know what, it really gives it that classy touch, in the sense that, I know I've got the plastic on the top, but I think it's just having even the instrument binnacles, because it's the small little things that make this car special.
Yeah.
Because there's no binnacle on top of the dials, the light comes in on the tops are in silver. It's just got that quality feel about the car, and extended leather just adds to that extra bit of specialness.
Exactly, it's just like a much more sense of occasion. And so the actual real reason behind needing this car was that I just needed something more reliable. If you remember that Top Gear episode where Jeremy Clarkson was in his 928, and he was talking about needing to get back to see his family, and his 928 didn't let him down. He travelled from London up to Glasgow, I would have loved my 944 to be that reliable, but it just wasn't. Every turn of the key was always like wishful thinking. So my brother had been going on and on for like years. You got to get a better car, and so I eventually succumbed to the whole pressure and ended up with this, and I'm very happy.
It's a wonderful car. Do you mind me asking when you first thought or came to think that you'd like to get a Cayman?
Yeah, so where I lived in Bristol was a few doors down from where James Dyson lived, and he always had beautiful cars parked outside. And one day, the first time, I think it was probably a Gen 1, he had a Gen 1 Cayman, and I instantly fell in love with it. I just remember it still to this day, and it's always stood with me that one day I want to own a Cayman over a 911. I mean, well, look, okay, if money was no object, then I'd actually want a 930, a 911 930, the kind of classic 1980s with the big crazy wing on the back and the sculptured lines and all that kind of stuff. But I've missed the chance to get into an air-cooled Porsche now. They're just silly money. So I think you get a lot of bang for your buck with a Cayman R, and the prices I think that they kind of flatline now. They kind of come down to a fair price for the amount of car you actually get for that.
I mean, the one thing that I can't stop smiling about is it's very hard for you to understand this just by watching the video, but this car is so much more than the sum of its parts, and I think partly it's the seats. The seats are just really grabbing me, and it kind of helps you kind of feel the communication going through the car. But I know some people may say, well, potentially it's about £15,000 more than my car, maybe a little bit more than that, but it's not just the 10 brake horsepower. I think it's not just any Cayman R that works, and I think you've been really good about waiting for the right options, because if I had a Cayman R without these seats, without the extended leather, I don't think it would be as special. If I had to choose the options in priority order, it's obviously manual, obviously you want the bucket seats. I've never really appreciated extended leather. I mean, I've seen it in a few cars, but I think it's just overlooked by many people on the options list, and I didn't even know the doors could be in extended leather as well. So was that something that was very important on your kind of like wish list?
It was, because for the amount of money I'm spending, I want something to feel really premium. And I remember test driving a 718, which was actually where I was going to actually be going.
Oh, you were going to buy a new 718?
I was going to go the 718 routes.
Four-cylinder one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it was actually your channel, and you had that succession of 987 videos all in a row. I started realising and remembering James Dyson's Cayman.
Yeah.
And figured, well, yeah, hang on, that's the car I should really be looking for. But yeah, the 718, it didn't have much in the way of options. I know you can get them fully loaded, but everything felt so cheap and nasty, really. And if you're spending that amount of money, you just want to try and, like I say, a sense of occasion. Everything feels really premium in it.
Most of the Caymans, because they were like effectively recession cars, 2009 to 2012, many of the cars that we see on the used market, they don't have that many options specified, because I guess at that time of the year, anyone that had loads of money maybe went for a 911, and the Cayman, to be fair, it was the cheaper Porsche to buy. But it looks like the specifications on this car, money wasn't really an object. I mean, HomeLink, I mean, you've got options on here where someone just said, this is the Cayman R that I want to create, and this is a very special spec of car. For me, it's very emotional being in this car, because you don't normally get inside a 987 with bucket seats, and let alone the extended dash. And the handling, I mean, I wouldn't personally call this too stiff. I think you may have said, do you find the handling on this a bit harsh for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, to me, this feels like you're driving a mahogany sideboard. I mean,
really?
There's no flexibility at all.
Well, you came out of a 944 though, so... Yeah,
the 944 was very soft, and the Mustang Fastback before that was just like super soft. Yeah, this is just a radically different experience to those previous cars.
I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. I can hear the exhaust note at the back as well. I'm not going to give it any beans on this car, but like, if this was my car, I'd be well into the high RPM. I remember when I first looked to buy a Cayman, and I'm going back 3 years ago, before I really got the Cayman buzz, I personally said, why would anyone buy a Cayman R? Because it's only 10 brake horsepower extra, a few little trinkets of design, and it's about £15,000 more. But as I've got into the Cayman range, we've heard Pinky Lie talk about these cars. It's a very special car. It's got the R badge. This kicked off the whole GT4 craze. So this was speechless. Yeah, you carry on.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, yeah, I feel very lucky. It's actually interesting being in the passenger seat, but yeah, I was lucky to find this one in Jersey, and it's a bit stereotypical of me to say, but you know, they're not short of money in Jersey, right? So it kind of stands to reason why you'd find a well-spec car in that region. Yeah, this is a keeper for me.
Oh, for sure.
You know, I haven't got the energies to start looking for another car.
Yeah. If I had this car, what would I trade up for? Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, the 718, when I test drove it, it bored me to death. It just didn't even feel like I was driving. It did everything for me. I love the analog feel of this, and I think it's going to be hard to actually get that sensation from anything post 2012.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting driving this car is the one thing that really was kind of excited me about the 981 was the interior, because it had a way more modern interior. However, given the spec of this car, the sport design wheel, the silver accents, the black inside, the interior of this car,
it's like a boutique hotel, yeah?
I've got to get some more photos of this on the inside, but the interior spec almost makes me prefer this to a 981, because I guess as I'm getting older myself now, I do like the heritage angle, you know, like there's a bit of history, it's not all shiny and super modern, and I think the whole centre console part is obviously different than the 981s, where you've got the whole column going along here with it. They've kept that in the 718.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I really liked it, and then actually what bothers me is how you can still see how many blanks you've got. So it's just a constant reminder of what you haven't.
But yeah, snap it over here. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And that bothers me basically. And I kind of quite like just how open everything is without that centre divide.
Yes.
I mean, the 944 was very similar in that respect.
As you go over bumps and jumps, one thing I noticed in the 718 GTS, the 4.0 that I was in, it soaked up the bumps in a more fluid manner, whereas this transmits a bit more communication through the wheel. But I do feel the bumps a little bit more. It hasn't quite taken off the harshness of them.
Yeah, I mean,
and I like that.
I could see for like if you've got a daily driver, right? I could see the benefit of that. But I quite like this. Feels like a bit like you're on a roller coaster that's out of control.
Oh, you need to get into a GT4 then. That'll really shake you about.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, maybe. But then if I had the money for a GT4, I'd go and get a 930, 911.
Okay.
You know.
I like it. So it's the heritage angle to you. If you had the money, it's not like you would go newer and shinier.
Well, it's the design language, right? I come from a kind of creative background, so it's, to me, first and foremost, is around the design. And the 987, certainly the R with the stance, it just feels much more sculptured.
Yeah.
The 981, it's still beautiful, right? But it's just like, it just feels a little bit flattened off.
Yeah.
It feels like a kind of love child of like Porsche and Saab, the 981. And then the 718 is chiseled, is the word I'd use.
Well, it's funny because I was just thinking of Pinky lying. He was saying the so-called Cayman. There is only one Cayman, and that's the 987. Oh, that was a great interview we had with him, and he said this is a timeless design. I cannot say how much of a difference the extended leather makes, and not having that binnacle on top of the dials. It's I want to see if I can take mine out, but I'm sure it's not that simple.
Yeah, it feels quite sort of go-kart motorsport-like, don't you think, with that binnacle removed?
It really is amazing, and plus the dials are in black. That's something else to option.
I like how certainly with everything being black, it just feels like one big unit as such.
Yeah. And I would. There was only one thing you've said that I would counter you on, and I think your analogy was it's like driving a mahogany
sideboard.
Oh, come on. I mean...
Well, that's only in comparison to previous cars.
Yeah. I mean, oh, look, there's a Lambo over there, but I think I'd rather have this thing.
Well, that looks hideous, doesn't it?
You're definitely enjoying Life of Cars to the Max. Thank you so much for bringing this car to us again.